I started playing guitar in high school, but I played some type of music instrument my whole life. My parents were both really into music. My father was a professional musician before World War II, and he played a little bit after World War II, but not much. And just grew up in a real musical household, and it just was a natural thing for me to sing and play something. But just like just about everybody else in my generation, the Beatles, got a guitar, and then as soon as I got the guitar, I knew, ooh, that's it. That's what I want to do. So, and pursued that for many years. Without not really knowing how to get a record deal or anything. But then in the mid-'70s, started getting more serious about it. We got a record deal with the Cleveland Entertainment at the time. They signed us to MCA, and we became the Iron City Houserockers, and pretty much been going at it ever since. Pittsburgh at that time had very, very eclectic radio. You could listen to, there was AM stations everywhere that would start up about, I guess maybe 7, 8 o'clock on Friday night and play till Sunday, and they would play rhythm and blues, and they really tried to out-obscure each other. So you would hear different songs that you wouldn't hear, not mainstream stuff. And you would get that on one hand, and on the other hand, with the mainstream stations, you'd hear all the hits of the day, the Motown, the Stones, the Beatles, the British Invasion, all the American bands. And then in the nightclubs, you could go in teen nightclubs on the weekend and see Mitch Ryder and Detroit Wills and Bo Diddley and, Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. So it was just like, a great time to grow up. We decided to, try to make it big, as they say, big in those days was getting a record deal. So we started recording songs I had been writing, and, sent out a bunch of demo tapes to different companies. And we were fortunate enough to be signed by Steve Popovich out of Cleveland Entertainment, who was like a legendary record promo man at the time, one of the youngest vice presidents in history for Epic. And Steve put us on MCA Records, and we just basically transferred our live show that we were doing in the clubs to the first record, and that became Love So Tough. And we were totally shocked the reception it got, especially the Rolling Stone review, because we had no idea we were going to be reviewed in Rolling Stone. In fact, I walked into a music store, local music store, and one of the guys said, "Hey, you're in Rolling Stone?" I said, "No, let me see that thing." So we were critics' darling for most of our careers. I think people gravitated to what we were saying, and how we said it. And we always had a point of view and good lyrics. That helped. Probably the second record, Have a Good Time But Get Out Alive, which was a really, we had Steve Van Zandt, who was working with Bruce at the time. He was coming over to work with us. We were at the Media Sound in New York City. He was like a block away in a power station. They were working on a river. We were working on Have a Good Time But Get Out Alive. And Steve was splitting his time during the day between both projects. And we were working with Mick Ronson and Ian Hunter. And it took the band to a whole different level. And just, it was like for me going to musician songwriting school. And I tried to learn as much as I could from that particular experience from all three of those guys, plus Steve input, Steve Popovich, and his right-hand man, Marty Mooney. So I was surrounded by all these really experienced, really great artists and music people. And I just, I was, like I said, I just soaked up as much as I could. I don't think I missed a minute in the studio. I stayed there through everything that everybody did just because I wanted to learn what was going on. So with that record, showed me how to be a pro. The first record was, we just went in and set up, played like we were at the, the local bar. Rich and I go back further than that. I had a band in college. We called ourselves Shoo, S-H-O-O-O, because we were a three-piece band and we liked the Who's. We thought we were being clever because we had 3 guys and 3 zeros, 3 O's at the end of the name. And So I believe it was in the 70s, probably 1970, maybe 71. I was going to school at Harvard on the Mon, California State College at the time, California University of Pennsylvania now, but I had a band, a popular band in that region, and I was writing songs and playing original material back then, and Rich started booking us. He had a agency called Go Attractions, so Rich and I go back quite a way. In 1970, it was a whole different ball game. We were glad. If you had $100 in your pocket, you were considered pretty rich. I don't know how much we played for, but probably wasn't much. $100 a night. He kept us working, and it was a really nice relationship, and it worked out for both of us. And my bass player quit, and Rich, went on to bigger and better things. So it took me a while. It took me, a few more years to recuperate, before I start working with Rich again. And by that time, he was, part of the legendary Caesar Engler. And he would book us when we can. One of our best shows, a classic show, was right here in this theater with Jay Giles Band. It was just, one of my top favorite concerts of all time with the Iron City Houserockers. So, and Richard's legendary. Saw so many good acts in this building. This was the place to go. Started the Houserockers, and we started recording in '79, and we peaked probably 81, 82, 83, and we just couldn't break it on radio, and the guys started getting impatient. The band started falling apart, so we called it quits. A few years later, in the early '90s, Bruce and I started working together. In between that, I had a couple records on Rounder that Rich helped us out with. Promoted us for a while. But like I said before, we were always the critics' darling, but couldn't get on radio, so it sort of became a vicious cycle, And then after another lull in the action, Bruce and I hooked up in '95. We put out American Babylon, and he came out and played with us as our guitar player, and that sort of put me back on the map. So we've been going pretty strong since then. Goodbye Stilltown. I had an odd record at Herman. You just interviewed Herman. Herman and I wrote this song called Radio Ears, and we actually had a local hit with it, and put together a Pittsburgh all-star band. And I was always the type of guy who wrote about my surroundings, my life, what was going on in my hometown and the friends I knew. And I can remember picking up a newspaper, it was probably '84, and it was talking about one of the last of the steel mills closing here, right in the city. And I just said, well, goodbye Stilltown. Whoa. And it was one of those songs that sort of wrote itself. Put together a hell of a band for that record. Again, the critics loved it, but, even in Pittsburgh, they wouldn't play it. So, what are you going to do? Pittsburgh's, a pretty tight-knit community. It's the guys who've been here for a while are all friends. We're all connected. We've all played in different combinations with each other. We know each other. We respect each other as friends. We love each other as friends. There's a really deep bond with the old school Pittsburgh musicians. And, most of the guys, the really great guys that I started out with are still doing it. Some of the bands that followed us, maybe there's only one or two of those bands still in existence. Most of the guys have given up the ghost by now, but it just seemed our generation, everybody's still out there playing. And there's a lot of camaraderie, with the Pittsburgh community. And You know, Rich is sort of, you know, he's the guy who hooks it up on a national level, you know, to give everybody a shot in front of a, you know, bigger audience. The Light of Day Foundation, my manager, who was my manager, Bob Benjamin, unfortunately has been laid low by Parkinson's disease. On his 40th birthday, he found out that he had contracted Parkinson's disease, and he decided that instead of, you know, just going quietly in the night, he was going to do something about it. So the next year on his birthday, which is early November, he put together a show at the Stone Pony in Asbury Park, and you know, we were headlining, and I called up Bruce. I said, "Hey, Bruce, you know, we have a chance to raise some money for Parkinson's disease. We're going to start a foundation to raise awareness and funding." And so Bruce was, you know, he was all in from the get for the first 4 or 5 shows, and it's expanded to 18 years now. We've been going for 18 years. There's Light of Day Canada. There's Light of Day all over to Europe. There's Light of Day in New York City, and there's a 3-day festival now in Asbury Park, and we've raised millions of dollars worldwide for Parkinson's awareness, and you know, really, I'm on a board of directors, and it's been our go-to charity. The guys that have been doing it for years are really committed, and it's, you know, we have a really strong bond and community with the Light of Day musicians, similar to what we have here in Pittsburgh. When I first started out, my family was, my father's family especially, was very poor. They were coal miners. He had to drop out of school, I think he was 12 or 13 years old, to work at coal mines during the Depression. And he encouraged me to get an education, and of which I wasn't particularly interested in doing myself at that time, but I went to school. I had 2 cousins that were special education teachers, and I just followed them into that field. I ended up getting a federal scholarship to study special education my senior year of college, and after I got out of college, you know, I did some odd jobs for a while, and then I found that I particularly liked working with the intellectually disabled kids, and I was the first wave that went into the mental institutions to help kids that had never been taught. Most of my kids had been abandoned in these institutions at a very young age. And I did that for years while I was playing, and I used the money that, you know, I got from teaching to finance my music career. So, then after going into the world of music, when I started having kids, you know, at one point I needed health benefits, and I went back into teaching. So I've been juggling both careers for quite some time.